Have you ever stayed up too long? And how did that make you feel? What about after you got some sleep? Do you think your computer would feel that good if it got some sleep too? Well, a new study from the Los Alamos National Lab shows that some kinds of artificial intelligence, or AI, might benefit from sleep, just like we do. To understand how that could be possible, let's take a look at how sleep works for us. Your brain is an electrochemical organ, which means that the brain cells or neurons that make up your brain transmit signals to each other via tiny electric impulses or brain waves. These brain waves fire faster or slower depending on what you're doing. They're pretty fast or high frequency when you're awake and engaged in something like watching a really cool science video. And when you start to fall asleep, your brainwaves start to slow down, and they go through several stages until you reach deep sleep or slow wave sleep. Over the course of a night, you actually cycle through all these different sleep stages, going from slow wave sleep back up to lighter sleep, where you might experience dreaming, and all the way back down. Scientists are still working to understand exactly what slow wave sleep does for us, but it seems to be involved in refreshing and repairing brain cells and other systems of the body that have been working hard all day. That's why you feel so much better after having a good night's rest. Now, a team of researchers thinks that similar benefits of sleep might help keep artificial intelligence programs running smoothly too. They're using a special kind of program called a spiking neural network to try and approximate how humans perceive and recognize images. Neural networks in general are computer algorithms that are really good at recognizing patterns, like interpreting this handwritten number 7 correctly. And they're built to mimic how our brains do that task. A spiking neural network is a special type that goes one step further, and it mimics how the brain's neurons fire in bursts rather than all the time. This is really hard to do, but the payoff is huge in terms of power efficiency. Just think of all the amazing things your brain can do, and it only runs on about 20 watts of power. That's less power than it takes to power a laptop computer. The research team gave their program a particular task called unsupervised dictionary learning, which is a fancy way of saying they gave it some images to look at, and then they asked it to come up with a dictionary of visual elements, the words, to describe them. By using this kind of training for their neural network, they were hoping to recreate how humans learn from their environment during childhood just by taking in their surroundings. So it's a little like handing you a cookie and asking you to figure out the recipe just by eating it. You could probably come up with some good ideas all on your own, that is unsupervised. And that's what this team of researchers did with their spiking neural network, but with images instead of cookies. They gave their AI many images, and these are all from a well-known data set of tiny pictures, just 32 pixels on a side, so you can sort of see a pixelated car, a frog if you squint, and a blurry truck. It actually doesn't matter what's in the picture or how crisp the image is, because they're interested here in whether the program can learn how to reproduce the images. So left to its own devices, they set this program to learn a dictionary of visual words, and it came up with something like this. This might look a little strange, but the important thing to notice is how different these little squares all are from each other. They have different patterns and colors, so that between all of them, they make up a whole vocabulary to describe lots of different images. Then, from combinations of these strange-looking words, the team asked their AI to recreate the original images. Imagine if we asked you to bake the same cookies just based on what you learned from eating one. You might get pretty close, and so did they. It seems like the program really did learn what some of the most important visual elements are to describe the images they started with, to a pretty good extent. But they ran into an unexpected problem along the way. During these unsupervised learning periods, the spiking neural network started to become unstable, meaning that the nodes in the network would get carried away and they would start spiking in response to just noise. And then soon they were firing all the time and they were completely messing up the simulation. Here's what their dictionary started to look like over time. So at first it's going through the images bit by bit, and some reasonable looking visual words start to show up with different patterns. But then as it keeps learning, the nodes just start spiking all the time and the words start to all look the same. They become meaningless. The researchers struggled to figure out what was going wrong until they tried something a little unusual. They broke up the unsupervised learning periods and spaced them out with naps. In between short bursts of learning from the actual images, they started showing the AI fake images that were just noise, and they changed the noise over time in this wave-like pattern. When they set the AI to learn its dictionary this time, it behaved very differently. Instead of the spikes growing continuously over time, they calmed down. And after some learning, they started to see some reasonable visual words showing up in their learned dictionary. And after even more learning, instead of becoming all the same and meaningless, they became more distinct and unique, which became more useful to them. It's what they wanted. So these little naps calmed down the spiking neurons and kept them from hallucinating. This sleep-inspired technique is likely to be useful for all sorts of future applications, and they want to use it next on a neuromorphic chip, which is a hardware piece specifically designed for these types of programs. They also wonder what this research might tell us about our own brains, and they speculate that maybe one reason why slow wave sleep may have evolved our own neurons on task.